This is Dr. J. Welcome to Thesising 101, where you once had a social life and now it's gone. In the previous tutorial, we summarized codes and generated themes, which basically just meant finding patterns in a dataset by applying interpretive analysis. In this tutorial, we will be focusing on refining and labeling these themes in such a way that you will be able to tell a story. The story in this instance is the eventual synthesizing of your data into a report. The refining and naming themes methods shared in this tutorial can be applied to both inductive and deductive studies. If you don't already know the difference between the two, please check out my tutorial. Let's start with reviewing our themes. If you recall, last we reviewed our original codes and created new revised codes. These codes were then grouped into themes. Since it is unlikely for us to tell a story with the themes we created in the previous step, as ordinarily these will be too many, we can rename them to candidate themes before we eventually get to our final themes. To get to our final themes, we need to perform a two-phased theme revision. Phase 1 is focusing on finding coherent patterns between codes within each and every theme, and Phase 2 is focused on validating each theme against your total dataset. While these phases are represented in a linear fashion, you will find that you may have to revisit each phase a few times until you have a story in your head that makes sense. To start, let's confirm if the codes in a theme represents a coherent pattern. Read the text you assign to each code and confirm if they belong to the bigger theme. Then establish if each code can be considered a finding, meaning if this code had to be a heading on its own, would it have enough data to support it? Another question you can ask is, does this code have enough data to be considered new knowledge as per the view of your study subjects, and can you use it to create an argument that would eventually contribute to answering your research question? If a code cannot stand on its own, you can combine them with other codes in the same theme, or you can move the code to a different theme altogether. This all depends on the story you would like to tell. Once you feel like a code within a theme can stand on its own, and you are sure that the code belongs in a specific theme, check if the combination of those codes within that theme can tell a coherent story. Each code may be valid in its own right, but if they don't mesh well with each other, as in you cannot create an academic argument that will support you in answering your research question, you can look into moving codes to different themes where it can support an argument better. Now let's look at Phase 2. Phase 2 is all about looking at the overall story you would like to tell. So you now need to focus on the theme as a whole. To start, evaluate if a theme has enough data to support it being a main theme, as in can this be considered a, or at least part of a key finding of your research. If not, there are two main options for refining your themes. 1. You can demote the theme and make it a sub-theme of a more critical finding. Or 2. You can amalgamate themes to make a whole new theme. It all depends on the finding that you would like to make clear to your reader. Here is an example of one of my studies where I identified my candidate themes. For this particular study, I identified close to 70 codes and eventually sorted them into themes, sub-themes, and even sub-sub-themes. By the way, using a mind map is a great way to show the relationship between pieces of data. I created this mind map in Vivo, but you can use any tool of your choosing. You can do this in CMap and even PowerPoint if your dataset is really tiny and you are technologically challenged. This was a deductive study where I identified codes with the help of a codebook, and the codes in green were the expected codes based on existing theory. If you missed the tutorial on how to do coding for an inductive and a deductive study, please check the link above. The codes that were colored in pink were the ones I identified inductively, as in they were not part of the frameworks that I used. I colored them differently because I wanted a visual reminder that these were surprises in my dataset and wanted to highlight this to the reader as part of the theoretical contribution I was aiming to make. When I reviewed my themes by confirming coherent patterns and validating the candidate themes against my dataset, which were the steps we just discussed, this monstrosity of a mind map became much more palatable for storytelling, and this was the final result. It was much easier to tell a story with 4 main points as opposed to the 18 points that we had in the previous phase. You can use these points as headings and subheadings and even sub-subheadings if you have them in your eventual write-up, which we will cover in the next tutorial. Phase 5 of thematic analysis is so easy that it doesn't even warrant a separate tutorial. All you have to do is to create a master description sheet with a description of at least your main themes and your sub-themes. Ensure that the name of your main theme is descriptive enough to make sense as a standalone heading. Then ensure that the names of your sub-themes are descriptive enough to make sense as a standalone, but also as it relates to the main theme. Thereafter, add a short description of what the theme and sub-theme is about. And there we go, stage 4 and 5 of thematic analysis. Over the last 3 years since I've had this channel, I have received so many requests for coaching, and I've met with quite a few of you from all around the world, from helping to create proposals to assisting in preparing for defending doctoral theses. Thesi? What's the plural of thesis? I'm gonna have to Google that. See, this is what happens when you grow up in a country that has 11 official languages. Sometimes your brain just gets a little confused. Anyway, it was a great experience, so much so that I have decided to expand this channel to include research coaching as a service. So, if you are interested, you can catch me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The details are in the description box below. If you need more options to get in touch with me, I am still working on it. I've only recently figured out how to send a message via Instagram, and I have completely given up on TikTok. Also, I am blocked on Twitter. So LinkedIn and Instagram it is. And that's it for me today. If you have any comments or questions, please just pop them into the comment section. Like this, share this, subscribe to this. This is Dr. J. No, this is Dr. J signing off. This is Dr. J signing off. Yup.